My name's Laura Masterson and I'm one of the dietitians working in respiratory medicine. Our role as a dietitian would be to kind of help to achieve an ideal body weight, really. I know some of you kind of might ask what is an ideal body weight, but we'll kind of go into that a little bit down the line as well about what an ideal body weight is, because obviously there's various different ways that we look at it versus overweight versus underweight as well. We would also address any other kind of nutritional issues, be it vitamin or mineral deficiencies as well that might arise throughout the course of your treatments or your conditions as well. You can be referred to us by your medical team. If you're not on the ward kind of seeing us on the ward, you would be referred to us by the COPD outreach team, so it's some of the girls that would normally kind of refer you on to us. So if you did feel like you wanted to see us for any kind of reason, that would be how you would get in contact with us. Sometimes GP services do actually have their own dietitian as well, and it might be more feasible for you to kind of see your dietitian at your own GP surgery rather than kind of hopping in and out. But they're kind of your options if you need to see a dietitian, really. BMI is what we call body mass index, and this is how we kind of obtain what your ideal body weight is. Basically, it's your weight compared to your height. If you think about it, we're all different heights, really. So if we kind of said one weight was an absolute ideal body weight for everyone, would be all completely different sizes, wouldn't we, really? So we base it on someone's height and we kind of work out their ideal body weight based on that. Once we work out this calculation, our ideal range would be between 20 and 25, and that's kind of what we say your ideal body mass index is. For anything under 20, we kind of class that kind of in the underweight category, and anything over that will be kind of heading towards the overweight category. Why we kind of aim for you to be an ideal body weight is basically if you're kind of in the overweight category, it puts an increased workload on your heart and your lungs in order to get the oxygen around your body. So if you think if it's got a greater distance to travel and you're kind of only getting the same amount of oxygen in, your body has to work that extra little bit harder, and that's why we aim for an ideal body weight for people who are kind of overweight. The main aim for us there would be to kind of lose weight in order to achieve that ideal body weight and to bring you back down to a normal BMI range. For underweight patients then, this can be as a result of a wide variety of different things, but I suppose the main kind of reason that we would see patients with COPD in the underweight category is because also your body is actually working extra harder to kind of get that oxygen in as well, because your lungs aren't functioning as optimal as they would be if they were healthier as well. So as it says there, it's the result of a high calorie needs and poor dietary intake. Why we say kind of poor dietary intake as well, some of you may kind of feel that your appetite may be impaired a little bit due to kind of the extra work that your body has to do from the breathing as well, and various different kind of infections and different things. We don't feel great and our appetite is a little bit off, so that kind of all has a knock-on effect as to how much nutrition our body gets in, and as a knock-on effect then either weight loss or weight gain. So poor diet, as we said, leads to muscle mass and lung mass depletion, making it more difficult for us to breathe as well. Our body organs all have various different muscles around them in order for us to kind of be able to breathe optimally. And if we're not getting enough nutrition in, these muscles don't get enough nutrition in order for them to work properly, and our body starts breaking down some of these muscles. And that's why sometimes if we're kind of in the underweight category as well, it makes our lungs have to work that little bit harder if there's less muscle there as well for us to breathe. So this is kind of a great guide, really. It gives us a breakdown of all the foods that we need each day and the portions that we need them in. So as you can see, that it's kind of broken down into the greater amounts that you would need at the bottom versus the smaller amounts that you would need at the top. And this is for an ideal kind of healthy, balanced diet. It does vary a little bit depending on whether you're overweight or underweight, but we'll kind of go into that a little bit down the line as well. So the bottom group there is your carbohydrate foods, like breads, pastas, potatoes, all those types of things. The next group up then is our fruit and veg, so we're aiming for 4 portions of those fruit and veg during the day as well. The pink one is our dairy protein sources, and the next one are kind of alternative meat, fish, beans, all those kind of types of protein sources. And the very top part then is the area that we kind of need to choose in small amounts for a healthy balanced diet. There are kind of high fat foods that we need to be kind of limiting. So overall then, a guide to healthy eating. In order to achieve a healthy balanced diet, we do need to kind of have regular meals throughout the day, and it's good to have that routine as well for our body clocks, just to kind of know what's going on. The carbohydrate foods that you had mentioned, there are starchy foods. We should have one of these present at each meal, so that things like your bread, your cereal, rice, potatoes, pasta, and preferably the high fibre carbohydrates are the ones that we kind of would recommend. You're aiming for your 5 fruit and veg a day, reducing your overall fat in your intake and replacing your saturated fats with your polyunsaturated and monounsaturated fats. Also avoiding sugary foods and avoiding high salt foods as well, especially if you've got high blood pressure, and salt is directly linked to high blood pressure as well. Include about 2 to 3 portions of oily fish during the week as well, and moderate alcohol intake. So if you feel like you kind of need to watch your weight and your weight is a little bit above the ideal body range, these are just some tips that you kind of need to take into account in order to reduce your fat intake so that your weight doesn't continue to increase. Grilling, baking, poaching, steaming, boiling. We kind of recommend all these types of cooking methods in order to limit the amount of extra fat that we use for our foods. So if you think about if you're deep fat frying or if you're frying anything, you're actually adding extra fat in there to the foods. Limit the amount of kind of like your pure blocks of butter as well, kind of to go for your vegetable spreads or your low fat spreads. The same with your dairy options, aim for your kind of low fat ones. If you are trying to watch your weight, so low fat cheese, low fat milk, it'll still have the same nutritional content in those apart from the fat. It'll just be the fat that's taken out. So things like your calcium will actually remain the same. Limit intakes of cheese also, even reduce fat cheese because there's still a high amount of fat in there. And if you're kind of cooking your meats and there's visible fats on there, try and cut off the fats off the meat if you can as well. Creamy sauces will have more fat than tomato-based sauces as well, so that's something to take into consideration. And things like our treats, our snacks and things like that, try and limit the amount of those that we would have overall throughout the day. Other guidelines then, apart from the intake of your saturated fats that we need to kind of watch, would be trying to increase our overall exercise, and again that will depend on how your kind of lung function and your breathing is, but we kind of just do say maybe gentle walking and kind of build it to your own tolerance as able. Eat your 3 meals a day and never skip a meal. Most people will say, oh, I don't really eat that much if they are aiming to achieve weight loss, and we would kind of say you kind of need to stick to your regular meals during the day rather than cutting out meals, because your body actually will go into starvation mode, so it actually doesn't break down the fat losses, so you still need to have your regular intake even if you are trying to lose some weight. And eat a variety of different foods just to make sure that we kind of cover all the vitamins and minerals throughout the day, and you're kind of getting a variety of those vitamins and minerals. So oily fish, about 2 to 3 portions of your oily fish per week if you've got a cardiac history, otherwise aiming for about 2 portions during the week. Our oily fish then are mackerel, herring, salmon, tuna, sardines, pilchards, kippers and fresh trout. Other sources are like our nuts and seeds and things like that as well. So as you can see that they're proven to reduce triglyceride levels, inflammation as well, blood clotting and blood stickiness, and it helps our heart beat a little bit more regularly, so it ensures that our heart is functioning optimally. High fibre diet can help to lower cholesterol as well, so this is kind of linking all into the overweight side of things, as some people, like as you say, might have high cholesterol as well, so it helps regulate how we're feeling from a fullness point of view or a satiety point of view, and therefore can help promote weight loss if it kind of regulates how we're feeling from a hunger side of things. Some high fibre breakfast cereals are things like porridge, Weetabix, shredded wheat, all those types of options are your high fibre foods. From your breads, we kind of say to have your wholemeal or granary breads because they've got a higher fibre intake there as well. And the same with your brown rice and your pasta, kind of aiming for the higher fibre and pastas and rices if you can. Fruit and veg are also quite a good source of your fibre intake as well. So if you're kind of aiming for your 5 a day, you should be getting enough fibre in through those kind of options as well. Nutrition and immunity, or how does nutrition affect immunity? So a poor diet can affect how our body reacts to or fights various different infections that we have throughout the course of our lives. So the body's cells that actually fight off these infections, or our immune system, are made up of various different proteins. In order for us to have the proper amount and in order for these to function properly, our diet kind of needs to be optimal to ensure that our body can repair all these cells and that are needed to fight off the infections. So as I say, they're needed to fight infections and repair damaged tissue. Some of you may be familiar with loss of appetite, so when you have an infection or you're not feeling the best or it's harder for you to breathe, and sometimes you kind of do lose your appetite. And being underweight will negatively impact your health as well. So it's estimated that about 20 to 25% of patients with COPD actually have protein energy malnutrition. So there's a quarter of patients with COPD have this. Body mass index and our fat-free mass are predictors of our overall health. So the more optimal our body mass index is in COPD, the better kind of long-term outcomes you will have from the COPD point of view. So just a little bit on malnutrition then, and some of the causes of malnutrition and COPD. For patients who actually have COPD, there's an increased energy expenditure. So your body's actually working that little bit harder to breathe, and it actually is burning off some extra calories while it's trying to do that extra breathing. Also, from the infection point of view, sometimes your body's working extra hard to kind of get rid of the infection as well, so it's actually burning off extra calories when it's trying to get rid of those infections. In those cases, your body will actually need more nutrition than it would on a normal basis. So it's just kind of taking that into account, that even though you're not feeling the best when you might have an infection, you would actually need more than you would normally require if you had no infection as well. From the resting energy expenditure point of view, so resting energy expenditure is like when we're just kind of sitting down and kind of not doing any extra activity or anything. That's also increased due to the breathing, extra breathing that your body's kind of having to do to get enough oxygen in to get it around your body. Also impaired muscle metabolism and chronic inflammation. And again, if we exercise that little bit more, we burn off that more calories basically due to your body trying to get some extra oxygen around your body. So as a result of the loss of appetite, a reduced food intake will also have an effect on malnutrition as well. So if you're feeling a bit tired or shortness of breath when you're eating, you feel like, oh, you might have a couple of spoonfuls and then I'm too full and I can't really eat anymore. What we do say in those kind of situations is have little and often. So trying to break down and kind of have more so 4 or 5 or even 6 kind of small portions throughout the day rather than large portions that overface you and you feel like you can't manage those types of meals. From a reduced appetite point of view and an early satiety point of view, it just means that you kind of will feel a bit fuller if you're trying to have larger portions as well. Reduced food intake then, as from a weight loss point of view, will recur in like frequent hospital admissions if you're unable to fight off some of those infections on a regular basis as well, and various different medications in order to help fight off those infections. So from the food cupboard point of view, this is if you're kind of underweight and aiming to kind of increase your weight at any point during the course of your COPD. Say to aim for your 3 main meals and 3 mid snacks during the day. So as I say, it's aiming for your 5 to 6 portions or small meals throughout the day. So it's your little and often approach. And we would say a high protein, high calorie diet. So that's trying to get as much nutrition into the small volumes of food that you are actually eating rather than having big portions with kind of less amounts of nutrition in there. And it's quite valuable also to have like your food cupboard stocked up. You know, if you are kind of housebound and you can't get out and about, at least you have your stocks there and you can kind of pick throughout the day rather than kind of relying on other people to kind of get that food for you. So some of the high protein, high calorie foods that we would recommend, a big one that we do focus on is your dairy products. So things like milk, dried milk powder, milky desserts like rice puddings and different things, and ice creams. They're all good options to help increase your protein and calorie intake throughout the day. Meat and fish, things like tins, sardines and salmon are quite handy to have. Souped, tinned or packet soups are quite handy as well and readily available. Cheese and crackers, beans on toast are all kind of quite easy options to have in the house as well. Cereals, things like we had mentioned before, like your porridge, breakfast cereals, dessert cereals, they're also good things that kind of keep, you know, and you can have them there as your snack options. Crisp beds, rice cakes, others things like biscuits, cakes, fruit cakes, sweets or chocolate. Again, taking this into account, this is all for patients who are kind of underweight and needing to kind of gain that extra weight. From the extras point of view then as well, we kind of went down the dairy product route. So things like Ovaltine, Horlicks, drinking chocolate, if you can kind of make those up on milk, they're good extra snack options to get some extra nutrition in order to kind of prevent any further weight loss if you are experiencing weight loss. Things like crisps, peanuts and dried fruit are also things that are quite handy to have as well. Other practical considerations then, things like chewing your food. Sometimes it becomes short of breath, so even choosing softer food, we would recommend that if you are finding it quite hard to eat and breathe at the same time. Also choosing foods that are easy to prepare, which we kind of mentioned before, and we've given you some ideas there. And also cook when you're kind of feeling the best or the most energetic, you know, and picking things that don't take too long. We always find that patients kind of will tell us that they get up, they feel hungry, spend ages cooking the meal, and then by the time they go to eat it, that they're actually too tired as well. So it's just taking that into account. And even if you are spending a lot of time cooking, maybe even bulk cook so that you can kind of provide some of those for the rest of the meals during the week, and it saves energy for you as well. Freeze leftovers or even make extra portions. Taking into account the amount of actual energy it will take you to prepare these. Relying on your family members as well if they're about, you know, trying to get them to help you with kind of some cooking options or even shopping or anything like that to make sure that you have enough supply there. There are Meals on Wheels options as well, and most of our social workers will discuss that with patients if they are in hospital and they feel like they don't have the support there and they're not getting enough food in the afternoons, that there are the Meals on Wheels options in order to provide you with a kind of a main meal during the day. I suppose it kind of gives you a main point to focus on, and then you kind of aim for your little and often portions throughout the day if you can kind of aim for that around that. Also thinking about posture and position. If we're sitting down and we're hunched over, think about what position our stomach is in as well. So it's making sure that you're kind of sitting upright and you know the food can kind of go down properly as well so that we can digest it properly and it doesn't make us feel as full as well if we're hunched over. And taking your time over your meals, especially if you're finding it hard to breathe. If you have a smaller portion, is kind of splitting that up so that you're not kind of getting more out of breath as well. Taste alterations. Some patients on long-term therapy for your COPD might experience taste alterations from the medications that you're on. So we can use mouthwash or sugar-free chewing gum or anything before meals, and it'll help before you eat your meals for them to taste a little bit better really, and hopefully be able to achieve a little bit more from an intake point of view if it's a bit more palatable. Also dry mouth and throat from your oxygen point of view, you know, if you're finding it hard to swallow, making sure that you've got enough fluids close by so it's easier for you to eat. And again, choosing softer, moist foods, so plenty of extra sauces and things that will help kind of make it kind of go down a bit easier as well. Even though you have the fluid there to help wash it down, watching the overall amount that you have, because the more fluid that's in your stomach, the fuller you will actually feel. And if you are choosing kind of your fluids and you're aiming for that weight gain point of view, think about some of the options we had said, like your dairy products, so like our full fat milks, they'll have actually more nutrition in there because there's very little nutrition in water. So if you're actually looking to get some more nutrition in, pick those types of things. Again, from the overweight side of things, if you're looking to cut down on the amount of calories that you're having, think about other options that have your calories, so things like water or your low fat milk. So we'd be kind of aiming for that side from the overweight side of things. Cold foods may be soothing, avoiding salty or spicy foods, which will increase the amount that you feel like you will have to drink. Avoid rough foods or use gravies or sauces, as we mentioned. Ice cubes or sharp tasting foods can be refreshing, like lemon squash. They'll all kind of affect the palatability of how you, before you eat, kind of basically, and how you feel before you eat as well. Taking all that into account from the underweight point of view, if you're kind of trying all these things and you're managing your little and often, you're managing 5 to 6 portions throughout the day, having your high protein, high calorie options, extra dairy products and things like that, and you still feel like that you're struggling and your weight is kind of going down, there are also options from the nutritional supplement point of view, and there's quite a big range of nutritional supplements out there that you can kind of avail of. They can be kind of achieved over the counter. There's various different ones over the counter, like your Build Up and Complan, and there are other options as well that we would kind of speak to you about if it was an option that you needed to go on these nutritional supplements. If you do feel like that you are struggling and your weight is continuing to go down, speak to some of the girls and they can kind of refer you on to us and we can go through those options. They're quite good. They've got plenty of extra vitamins and minerals and calories and protein in order to kind of help from a nutritional point of view. And that's just some of the nutritional supplements that we would use in the hospital as well. Hopefully I've given you a little bit of insight. I've tried to touch on what kind of an ideal body weight is, why nutrition is quite important in COPD. We've touched a little bit on kind of the overweight side of things versus the underweight side of things as well, and what you kind of need to do in order to achieve kind of that ideal body weight really. You should be all experts now anyway, so we should be able to kind of aim for that ideal body weight anyway. Is that all right?